Have you ever stopped to wonder why the ground beneath your feet suddenly feels less like solid earth and more like shifting sand, even when you are standing on the very floor you have lived on for 40 years? This is the question that haunted Arthur Miller, an 82-year-old retired carpenter from the moss-draped, historic streets of Savannah, Georgia. I remember the afternoon he walked, or rather, shuffled, into my clinic, his gnarled hands gripping the handles of a walker with a white-knuckled intensity that spoke of a deep, unspoken terror. Arthur was a man who had spent his entire life mastering the physics of wood and nails, building homes that would stand for centuries, yet here he was, feeling his own internal architecture collapsing. As I sat across from him, I didn't see just another patient. I saw a man mourning the loss of his autonomy, terrified that he was becoming a ghost in his own house, a burden to the daughter who had moved in to watch his every step. The tragedy of aging, as I explained to Arthur while looking over his neurological charts, is often a silent theft that occurs in the dark. Most people believe that losing balance is just a natural, slow fading of strength, but the clinical data from our latest orthopedic studies tells a far more alarming story. Every single year after you cross the threshold of 70, your legs lose an average of 883 nerve connections. Think of these as the tiny, golden, electrical bridges that span the gap between your intent and your action. They are the messengers that tell your muscles exactly how to move, how to adjust for a pebble on the path, and how to keep you upright against the invisible pull of gravity. In Arthur's case, these bridges weren't just flickering, they were disappearing. Once these nerves vanish, the medical reality is stark. They do not simply grow back on their own through wishful thinking or casual movement.
As we spoke, I could see the reflection of the Savannah sun hitting the silver of his hair, but his eyes remained fixed on his trembling knees. I had to be honest with him about the velocity of this decline. While those nearly 900 nerves are vanishing annually, the muscles in the thighs are shrinking by almost 1.5% every single month. It is a dual assault on the human frame. Your balance reflexes, those lightning-fast calculations your brain makes 1,000 times a second, slow down by 43%. For a man like Arthur, who used to walk along roof rafters without a second thought, this wasn't just a statistic. It was an existential crisis. Doctors often describe the speed at which the ability to push oneself up from a chair drops as alarming. Yet the most frightening discovery of all is that this damage is not a gradual, predictable slope. Instead, it hits in sudden, jagged waves, week by week, causing a state of silent instability long before your knees finally buckle or your steps visibly shorten. Arthur looked at me, his voice a gravelly whisper, and asked why he had felt so confident only a month ago, only to wake up one morning feeling like his legs belonged to a stranger. I explained that this is the tipping point where the nervous system can no longer compensate for the missing bridges. This is why so many seniors go from walking with a proud, steady gait to needing constant support in what feels like the blink of an eye. The world becomes a series of hazards. A plush rug becomes a trap, a bathroom tile becomes a sheet of ice, and a simple staircase becomes a mountain. We analyze the Harvard-based research, which confirms that this instability often goes undetected by traditional checkups because it happens at the neurological level first, hollowing out the foundation while the exterior still looks intact. I watched Arthur's daughter, who stood in the corner of the room, her eyes shimmering with the pain of seeing her father, the man who once carried her on his shoulders, now unable to trust his own feet. I told them both that there is a profound difference between getting older and withering away, and that while this nerve loss is aggressive, it is also preventable and, in many ways, reversible. We aren't just looking at a mechanical failure. We are looking at a communication breakdown between the brain and the bone. To heal Arthur, we had to do more than just exercise. We had to spark a biological revolution. We had to find a way to wake up the dormant fibers and forge new pathways before the silence of the nervous system became permanent. In that quiet clinic room, amidst the scent of antiseptic and old wood, we began the journey of reclaiming his foundation, proving that even at 82, the body is still capable of hearing the call to rise if you know the right language to speak to it. How many times have I sat in my office and listened to a patient tell me, with a mixture of pride and desperation, that they walk 3 miles every single morning? It is a refrain I hear from almost everyone over the age of 60, a belief passed down like a sacred relic that as long as the feet keep moving, the body remains strong. But as a physician who has spent decades analyzing the biomechanics of aging, I have to be the bearer of a difficult, necessary truth. Walking
while beautiful for the soul and essential for the heart, is a maintenance lie when it comes to the preservation of your power. It is a slow motion tragedy I see in my clinical practice. Active seniors who never miss a day of walking, yet find themselves suddenly unable to stand up from a low sofa or maintain their balance on an uneven sidewalk. The cold, hard data from recent orthopedic studies reveals a shocking reality that most people never hear until it is too late. If you rely on walking alone as your primary form of exercise after 60, you could be losing up to 30% of your total leg strength in just one single year. I remember explaining this to a group of retirees who gathered at a local community center. They looked at me with disbelief, their faces etched with the fatigue of years of doing everything right. I had to explain that walking primarily maintains blood flow and cardiovascular health, which is vital, but it barely touches the deep stabilizer muscles, the internal scaffolding, that are disappearing at the fastest rate. These are the fast twitch fibers and the deep neural connections that manage explosive movement and sudden balance corrections. Walking is a steady state activity. It doesn't challenge the nervous system to forge new paths or tell the muscles to rebuild lost fibers. It is like trying to prevent a house from collapsing by polishing the windows while the foundation beams are being eaten away by termites. The research is clear. Walking maintains the status quo, but it does not reverse the neurological decay I described to Arthur.
To truly save your independence, you must move beyond the pavement. We need to wake up those dying nerves and rebuild the fibers that have gone dormant from years of repetitive, low-intensity movement. When I look at the clinical data, I see a pace of muscle wasting that researchers call shockingly fast for adults over 70 who don't engage in targeted resistance. But within that same research, there is a glimmer of incredible hope. It uncovered 5 very specific, almost medicinal movements that act as a spark to a cold engine. These exercises don't just move the body, they shock the nervous system into a state of rapid repair, restoring leg power at a speed that defies what we previously thought possible for the elderly. We are talking about a total biological recalibration. My goal is to move you from the false security of the morning stroll into the revitalizing power of nerve-activating movements that can reverse years of weakness, even for those who currently feel they can barely stand without a hand to hold. Martha Higgins lived on the second floor of a charming, drafty apartment building in Portland, Maine, surrounded by walls of books she had curated over 40 years as a librarian. But when she came to see me, the books remained on the shelves, and the stairs had become her prison. Martha complained of a heavy, tired feeling in her legs that felt like she was wading through waist-deep water every time she tried to move. Her legs were swollen, marked by the telltale blue maps of varicose veins, a sign that her circulation was failing to fight the relentless pull of gravity. I didn't reach for a prescription pad to give her diuretics or suggest painful vascular surgery. Instead, I stood up, walked to the edge of my desk, and showed her how to turn her bapshan, her calves, into what scientists call the second heart. This is the standing heel raise, an exercise so deceptively simple that many of my colleagues overlook it, yet research from the American College of Sports Medicine confirms it is one of the most underrated tools for survival after 60. When you rise onto your toes, you aren't just engaging the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles, you are triggering a powerful mechanical pump that forces blood from the lower extremities back up to the heart. This process, known as venous return, is what prevents blood pooling and that agonizing heaviness that makes the elderly feel invisible and trapped. I told Martha to stand behind a sturdy chair, her hands resting lightly on the wood, and to rise as high as she could. The secret, I whispered, is the tempo. I watched her struggle at first, her ankles wobbling like a newborn fawn's. I instructed her to take a full 4 seconds to lower her heels back to the floor. This time under tension is crucial for older adults because it stimulates muscle growth without placing a single ounce of excessive stress on the fragile joints. It is a way to build strength in the shadows. Martha began doing these while her morning tea steeped, 3 sets of 15 repetitions. A pro tip I give all my patients: slightly bend the knees to engage the soleus, that hidden muscle underneath the calf that is the true anchor of human stability. Within just 4 weeks, the change was visible. The swelling in her ankles subsided, and that heavy feeling began to lift. Clinical studies from the University of Wisconsin showed that people like Martha, who performed these regularly, saw a 28% reduction in falls and a 35% increase in ankle flexibility. Martha wasn't just exercising, she was reopening her world, one slow, controlled rise at a time. In the quiet moments of an exam, I often watch the way a patient breathes when I ask them to move. There is a common instinctive reaction in the elderly. They hold their breath, tensing their entire upper body in a desperate attempt to find stability. I have to gently remind them that breath is the conductor of the entire healing orchestra. When you hold your breath during exercise, your blood pressure spikes, putting unnecessary strain on a heart that is already working hard, and you starve the very muscles you are trying to save of the oxygen they need to repair those dying nerve connections. I tell my patients to think of their breath as the tide, exhaling forcefully as they rise or exert, and inhaling deeply as they return to center. This isn't just about comfort, it's about delivering the raw materials of recovery to the cellular level.
This breathing pattern also helps manage the intra-abdominal pressure that protects the spine. But there is a deeper alchemy at play here involving the bones themselves. Many seniors fear that movement will break them, but the reality is that the right kind of movement is what keeps them whole. When muscles contract powerfully against the bone, they create a mechanical stress that signals the body to deposit more minerals, increasing bone density in the femur and the hips. This is how we fight osteoporosis without a pharmacy's worth of side effects. I explain to my patients that the burn they feel isn't something to fear, it is the feeling of lactate being produced. Recent research shows that lactate isn't just a waste product. It's a signaling molecule that tells your body to produce more mitochondria, the cellular powerhouses that keep you energetic and youthful. Proper breathing ensures that this metabolic process happens efficiently. It prevents the panic response in the nervous system, allowing the brain to focus on the fine motor control required for balance. I often see a light bulb moment in my patients when they realize that by simply syncing their lungs with their legs, the exercise becomes 40% easier. We are teaching the body that it is safe to be strong again. By avoiding the breath-holding trap, you are keeping the electrical grid of your body open and receptive. This is the foundation upon which all other strength is built. It is a quiet, rhythmic defiance of the aging process, a way to tell your nervous system that you are still in command, still breathing, and still very much alive. Eleanor Vance was a retired school teacher from Sedona whose life was defined by the vibrant red rocks she used to hike every weekend. But when she sat in my clinic, she was grieving. She told me, with tears she tried to hide, that she was terrified she wouldn't be able to stand up during her granddaughter's wedding ceremony in the spring. Her quadriceps, those 4 powerful muscles on the front of the thigh, had wasted away until her legs looked like thin reeds. This is a critical stage. Research from Stanford University has identified quadriceps strength as the single best predictor of maintaining independence in daily life. Without these muscles, the simple act of sitting down and standing up becomes a terrifying gamble. I walked Eleanor over to a flat section of my office wall and told her we were going to build her an invisible chair.
The wall sit is an isometric masterpiece. I had her walk her feet out 2 feet and slide her back down the wall until her thighs were parallel to the floor, her knees forming a perfect 90-degree angle. Keep your back flat, Eleanor, I coached, and feel the wall supporting you as your muscles do the work. Within 10 seconds, her legs began to tremble. The Sedona quake, I joked, though the science behind it was serious. That trembling was her nervous system struggling to recruit dormant muscle fibers. I explained that even 10 seconds of this hold provides massive benefits if done in multiple sets. The secret to Eleanor's recovery was isometric progressive overload. We didn't rush. We added just 5 seconds to her hold time each week. A fascinating study from the European Journal of Applied Physiology found that this specific exercise can increase muscle endurance by 67% in just 8 weeks. For Eleanor, this meant her quadriceps were becoming endurance machines again. By the second month, she could hold the position for 2 full minutes. The burn she felt was the sound of her mitochondria multiplying, turning her thighs into powerhouses that could handle stairs and long walks without fatigue. Most importantly, the wall sit protects the joints because there is no repetitive grinding. It is a static battle against gravity. When the wedding day finally arrived, Eleanor didn't just stand, she walked with a grace that left the room silent. She had reclaimed her independence muscles, and in doing so, she had reclaimed her place in her family's most precious memories.
In the deep microscopic layers of our muscles, there is a battle for energy that determines how old we feel on a daily basis. I often explain to my patients that aging isn't just about wrinkles or gray hair, it's about the health of our mitochondria, the tiny furnaces inside our cells. When we are young, these furnaces roar with life. But as we pass 70 and the nerve connections begin to fail, these furnaces often go cold. This is why many seniors feel a sense of profound exhaustion after even minor exertion. But the exercises we are doing, particularly the isometric holds like the wall sit, act as a biological thermostat that turns these furnaces back on. When you hold a muscle in contraction, you are creating a localized environment of high metabolic demand.
The body responds to this demand by producing more mitochondria to handle the load. This is why my patients often report a surge in overall energy levels just a few weeks after starting this protocol. It is not just that their legs are stronger, it's that their entire cellular system has been upgraded. A 2023 study showed that people who engaged in these specific types of time under tension exercises could walk 23% farther without fatigue. They weren't just stronger, they were more efficient. I tell my patients that every second they hold that invisible chair against the wall, they are literally manufacturing youth at a cellular level. It is a form of internal medicine that no pill can replicate. Furthermore, this mitochondrial health is linked to brain health. The signaling molecules produced during these intense but safe muscle contractions cross the blood-brain barrier, offering a layer of protection against cognitive decline. I've seen patients who were beginning to struggle with memory and focus find a new sharpness once their leg strength returned. We are an integrated system. You cannot strengthen the foundation of the house without improving the air quality inside. When those cellular powerhouses are thriving, you don't just move better, Bankem de Hoisin. You feel like a version of yourself you thought was gone forever. It is the ultimate reward for the discipline of the burn. George Sullivan was a retired postman from Chicago, a man who had spent 30 years navigating icy sidewalks and steep porches. But at 79, George had developed what I call the pensioner's waddle, a side-to-side sway that signaled a dangerous weakness in his hip abductors. George had experienced 3 near falls in a single month, all of them occurring when he tried to step sideways to avoid a puddle or a pet. I sat him down and showed him the data from the Mayo Clinic. Weak hip abductors increase your fall risk by a staggering 280% after 60. These muscles, the gluteus medius and minimus, are the stabilizers of the gait. Without them, your pelvis tilts with every step and your balance becomes a house of cards. I had George lie on his side on a firm mat in my clinic. "Slow and steady, George," I said as I guided his top leg upward to a 45-degree angle. I made sure his toes stayed pointed forward, not toward the ceiling, because rotating the foot cheats the movement by using the hip flexors instead of the target abductors. I watched George's face turn red with the effort of lifting just the weight of his own leg. "It's harder than it looks, Doc," he grunted. I explained that the magic happens in the last few repetitions when the muscle is fatigued and the brain is forced to recruit every available fiber. This is where we trigger the adaptation response that makes a 79-year-old body grow stronger. We added a small 5-second circular motion at the top of the lift to engage the smaller, deeper stabilizing muscles. A groundbreaking study in the International Journal of Sports Physical Therapy showed that people who did this saw a 52% reduction in chronic hip pain. For George, this was life-changing. He stopped waddling and started walking with the linear precision of the postman he used to be. By strengthening the outside of his hips, he also protected his knees from collapsing inward, a common cause of bone-on-bone arthritis. George finally regained his frontal plane stability, the ability to move side to side without fear. He no longer felt like a man waiting for a fall. He felt like a man who owned the ground he walked on. Balance is often treated as a mysterious gift that simply vanishes with age. But in my clinic, we treat it as a finely tuned neurological system that can be recalibrated. I explain to my patients that they have millions of tiny sensors in their muscles, tendons, and joints called proprioceptors. These sensors are constantly sending pings to the brain, like a GPS, telling it exactly where the body is in space. As we age and become less active, these sensors get rusty. The signals become faint or delayed, which is why a senior might not realize their foot is slightly tilted until they've already twisted an ankle. The beauty of these 5 exercises is that they are proprioceptive training in disguise. When Arthur Miller or George Sullivan performs a slow 4-second descent in a heel raise or a leg lift, they are forced to focus intently on the position of their limbs. This intense focus cleans the sensors and sharpens the neural pathways. We are essentially upgrading the software of the brain to match the new hardware of the muscles. Research shows that this type of neurological training is often more important for preventing falls than raw strength alone. I've seen patients who weren't particularly muscular become incredibly stable because their brain-body connection was so sharp.
It's like the difference between a blurry television screen and a high-definition one. Suddenly, the brain can see the world clearly again. I often incorporate balance challenges into these movements, such as having a patient briefly close their eyes while doing a supported heel raise. This forces the proprioceptors to work even harder without the help of visual cues. The result is a profound sense of groundedness. My patients tell me they feel sturdier, like a tree with deep roots. This internal confidence is the best defense against the anxiety that often keeps seniors homebound. When you know deep in your nervous system that your legs will catch you, the world stops being a place of danger and starts being a place of possibility again. Sarah Jenkins was an 84-year-old grandmother from Austin whose world had shrunk to the size of her living room. The reason was simple. She could no longer get off her favorite armchair without her son literally pulling her up by the arms. This loss of the sit-to-stand movement is the ultimate red flag of aging. Scientists at the National Institute on Aging have found that people who cannot complete 5 of these movements in under 12 seconds have a 300% higher risk of disability. It is the threshold of independence. When I visited Sarah, she felt a deep sense of shame, a lonely pain that she was no longer a whole person. I told her, "Sarah, we are going to turn this chair from your cage into your gym." Or, we practiced the slow motion sit to stand. I had her cross her arms over her chest to eliminate the habit of using momentum or her hands. "Inhale as you lower, Sarah," I instructed, "and barely touch the seat, don't plop." That controlled descent, the eccentric phase, is where her quadriceps and glutes had to work the hardest to resist gravity. I watched her struggle, her face a mask of concentration, but I saw the fire in her eyes. Most people plop because they lack the strength to control the last 3 inches of the movement, but those last 3 inches are where the most strength is built. We started with 3 sets of 8 repetitions, resting a full minute between each. The sit-to-stand is a compound functional movement, meaning it works the quads, hamstrings, glutes, and core all at once. For Sarah, it was the key to her cage. Within 6 weeks, she was standing up with a power she hadn't felt in a decade. She stopped needing her son's help, and with that physical strength came a tidal wave of emotional healing. She went from being a patient to being a woman who could go out for lunch or walk in her garden. The exercise also strengthened her vastus medialis, the teardrop muscle that stabilizes the knee, ending the bone-on-bone grinding that had plagued her for years. Sarah's story is a testament to the fact that muscle loss is not a life sentence. It is a condition that can be treated with nothing more than a sturdy chair and the will to rise.
We have come to the pinnacle of our journey, the movement that I call the Restoration King. I remember introducing the modified Bulgarian split squat to a group of skeptical 80-year-olds. They looked at me like I was asking them to climb Everest. But when researchers at the University of Tampa compared this to every other leg exercise, they found it activated 73% more muscle fibers while putting 40% less stress on the spine. It is the absolute safest way to rebuild lost years. By standing in front of a low step and placing one foot behind you, you force each leg to become a pillar of its own strength. It corrects the imbalances that cause us to limp, and it stretches the hip flexors that become tight and weak from years of sitting. In a 2024 clinical trial, participants over 65 who performed this exercise just 3 times a week for 12 weeks showed muscle mass increases on MRI scans equivalent to reversing 10 years of aging. 10 years reclaimed in 3 months. I have seen men who walked with a shuffle begin to stride like athletes. I have seen women who feared the stairs start to take them 2 at a time. The unilateral nature of this exercise, working one leg at a time, also provides a massive stimulus to the brain, requiring intense neural activation that helps maintain cognitive function and may even reduce the risk of dementia. It is a total body, total brain workout that costs nothing but 15 minutes of your time. My dear friends, my journey with 30,000 patients has taught me that your legs are the foundation of your spirit. When they fail, your world shrinks. But when they are strong, your life expands. Do not wait until your knees buckle or you feel the silent instability take hold. The maintenance lie of walking is not enough to save you from the neurological ghost of aging. You must be proactive. Start today, right now, as soon as this video ends. Try just 5 heel raises or 1 30-second wall sit. Build the second heart in your calves, the independence in your thighs, and the stability in your hips. I am Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and I want to see you dancing at your grandchildren's weddings, walking through the woods, and standing tall in your own home for as long as you live. Every day you wait is another day of precious muscle fiber lost to the silence. Reclaim your power.
If this message has touched you, if you feel the spark of hope that I have seen in Martha, Eleanor, and George, please hit the subscribe button and join our community. We are more than a channel. We are a clinic of the heart and the home dedicated to helping you live with vitality and dignity long after 60. Your story is not over. Your strongest years are waiting to be built. Subscribe now and let's take that first strong step together. Thank you for watching, and may you walk in strength and peace.